still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home. Love, sweet love.
No, this shouldn't happen again. Kissing her, turning her body upside down, then walking away and making her look like she was the evil one. She didn't ask to be kissed by him. She only responded because she couldn't help it. Stop, she said before she could stop herself. There were two of us just now. I didn't tell you how it felt kissing you, and so you must be talking about your own feelings. So I suggest you ask your supermodel girlfriend the same question. But if you ask me, I would say it was nothing more than lust. And unfortunately, I have never been the kind of girl to give in to mere animal satisfaction of the body. She walked past him. It has to mean so much more for me, she added to herself silently as she walked with her head held high. It was high time some woman put him in his place. It was time he found out the kind of girl she was. That she was not a cheat or a foolish, brainless girl who thought the moon and the stars depended on him for their shine. Helen got back and found Dave back and looking around for her. He smiled when he saw her and she smiled back. For a moment there, I thought you had been kidnapped. And who would carry out such a huge feat in this place? She laughed. I don't know, maybe some deity. He handed her her drink. Are you superstitious? Helen asked jovially as she sat down. When you have the great fortune of being with a very beautiful woman in a magical place fit only for goddesses, you must be weird then, because some god somewhere is definitely your rival. Helen stared at him amazed. Wow, that is definitely an angle for Nollywood. I am making my film next quarter, and it is a period piece. Really? Great. I am already your #1 fan. So where did you go? Helen slowly lowered her cup and stared at him. Did he know? Did he suspect? Oh, sorry. I am not allowed to ask. Helen laughed. Like you said, this is a magical place, and I couldn't resist exploring. I am guessing you don't want to do that again? I thought I could lure you to a very secluded corner with the excuse that we would search for fairies, but then we would just neck. Helen, remembering what happened when she took a walk, smiled at the memories. She had to push the memories back as her body trembled. Would you settle to slow dancing to that Celine Dion song instead? She asked. Wouldn't mind showing you off and become the envy of every man here? She nodded and offered him her hands. Let's go make some people jealous then. And Chuck's face swam into view. Chuck sat with Star, who was trying to chat him up. He couldn't stop staring at her. The smile that never left her face as she talked with him. The easy way they touched each other. It healed him when her voice rang out in shocking laughter. Uche tells me you're single again.
He turned to her and smiled. Not exactly. You are getting back together? Star asked, smiling. Chuck knew why she wanted to know, and he wished he could give her a straight answer. But he wasn't talking about Kim when he said not exactly. He was referring to the silly feelings he was developing for a girl he didn't care about until a few hours ago. You know how things go, Star. You can never tell what the heart would want. He smiled at her. From the corner of his eyes he saw Helen and her boyfriend stopping at the middle of the dance floor and started dancing to a really slow song. The pain he felt was real. He felt like someone just pierced his heart with a sword. He stopped himself before he could rub his heart. You feel like dancing? He turned to Star, and she smiled her consent.
Mma walked up to Tessie, who was standing still and watching. or observing, like Tessie would put it. What's so interesting? Ma asked, stopping at Tessie's side. Shh, Tessie replied. Ma silently looked around for something of interest, but only Helen dancing with Dave, which was amazing because they make a very cute couple, and maybe Chuck and Star, who were coming to the dance floor. Tessie turned to her and laughed happily. Amazing. Amazing? What's amazing? Ma asked. Chuck and Helen are on their way to falling in love with each other. Ma looked back at the dance floor and saw nothing to that effect. Are you sure? Because they are not even dancing with each other. Amazing, isn't it? How we yearn and pray for love, only to fight it when it comes, because you're afraid of falling, not knowing if the other person will catch you. It happened to me and to you, and I believe that is the phase those two are in now. She laughed. Maybe they need a little nudge in the right direction. How can you tell? Star, Dave, pay a little attention, honey. Tessie told her, leaving. Helen missed a step just as Star and Chuck joined them on the dance floor. She found herself gripping Dave tighter. She dared a look at Chuck, and their eyes met and held. Suddenly, she was not dancing with Dave anymore. She was dancing with Chuck. He drew her closer and whispered to her, I wish we could stay here forever. Just the two of us with the rolling ocean, the waving coconut trees, the winking stars and smiling moon, and this serene white sand, and no one else. Helen was lost, and she kissed him on the shoulders. If Dave was surprised, he didn't show it. He only hugged her tightly. Switch partners? She heard Chuck say, and Helen was startled out of her daydream, and she looked up at Dave. But he was smiling as he took Star's hands and delivered her up to the one man who could destroy her and her world as she had come to know it. What are you playing at? Helen hissed at him. Somehow she knew he had one up his sleeves, and that she was not going to like it. Nothing, he whispered in his husky voice, and she found herself falling more into him. Not with all these people milling about, he whispered. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have in mind would take two to accomplish. I have sworn that nothing like what happened before would ever happen again. He laughed. Be careful of what you wish for, darling. I might decide to help your vow along, and that would be the happiest woman on earth. No, honey. You would end up the most bitter woman on earth from having to wonder for the rest of your life what it could have been like. Feeling frustrated, she stepped on his toe and he jumped. She smiled. Be careful of what you're playing at. You really need those toes to be sexy. You. She stepped out of his hands and turned to Star. I would have him back now, still smiling. She took just one look back and saw him staring at her and smiling like the villain he was. That startled her because that wasn't the reaction she expected. I would be leaving soon. She turned to Dave. Why? The party is just getting started. I don't want to be getting back late to my friend's house. He's married. Okay, I think I should go to bed too. We have an early start tomorrow. Why? You just started enjoying yourself? Helen laughed. It wouldn't be the same without you. Now I feel guilty for leaving. She smiled. Don't. I really am feeling very sleepy. You are exceptional, you know. He smiled and they stopped dancing. No matter what happens from here, you will always have a part of me. That's the sweetest thing I've ever had. He held her by the hand and they left. Chuck watched them leave and felt murderous. He couldn't help the image of the two of them together. It was obvious from the way they couldn't stop touching each other what they were going to do. Slowly he smiled at Star and kissed her. Anything, just about anything, to stop himself from following and ending up a murderer. He broke off the kiss when he realized that he could actually hurt Star. He shouldn't take advantage of her. When did he become so insensitive that he would use a friend so callously? Because he couldn't decipher what was wrong with him? Feeling like a monster, he let go of her and led her out of the dance floor. He was going to fight these feelings. It was not right that a woman should have this strong hold on him, and he was going to win no matter what. Helen woke up feeling very warm and well rested. The day was just breaking. The light blue dawn was pouring in from the slight opening of the window drapes. She stretched languorously and yawned. She felt light and glorious. She had never had this kind of restful sleep in a while. She smiled and thought of all that happened the night before, and her smile broadened. There was definitely some kind of chemistry between her and Chuck, no matter how hard he tried to deny it. Then she sighed as she remembered she was not free to return his flints. No, she said to herself. She was not going to think of that today. She tried to turn away from the window, as if by doing that, she could turn away from the ugly thoughts threatening to penetrate into her wonderful world, only for her to meet a hard wall obstructing her movements. Becoming alarmed, she gently touched the wall and found it soft, like human flesh, only harder and more muscular. Helen sat up and rubbed her eyes. Heart skidding, mind reeling, she peeked and saw some shadowy figure of a man lying next to her. She had gone to bed alone, hadn't she? She did also go to the right room, didn't she? With mounting dread, she gently turned to take a clearer look at the man sleeping on the bed with her. Quit moving about, for goodness sake, a rough voice said in British accent. Helen's eyes widened in an indefinable shock.
Chuck, what are you? He sat up, rubbing his eyes. First, he assaulted her senses with the heavenly view of his naked chest. She stared shamelessly and couldn't look away. Had she slept beside this beauty all night and didn't even know it? She wanted to kick herself for missing the fantastic opportunity. For not even waking for once to Helen stopped, trying to rein in her thoughts. Then he looked at her and she was lost. She lost her eye at that moment when his eyes, like the sea in the early morning, poured all over her, and she knew there was no power stronger than the hold he had on her. What is the meaning of this? How did you get in here? He asked, looking around, confused and breaking into her fantasy. Oh, that is not going to work. It is definitely not going to work. Are you crazy stalking me to this extent? She asked, trying to recover her balance. I am still trying to wrap my head around this one. This is my room. He looked around the room. I am not mistaken. This is definitely my room. How is this your room? I got here before you, and this is the room I usually stay in whenever I have an occasion to spend the night here. He laid back on the bed and laughed. I am really glad that you find sneaking into my room funny. She tried sarcasm, since nothing else seems to be working.
I am surprised you are complaining. I've been told I make a heaven on earth bed partner. Helen wanted to hit him, but she didn't want to dignify his actions by getting violent. Instead, she stood up. Wow, he exclaimed as his eyes traveled up and down her body. She was just in her short night shirt, which left nothing to be imagined, and didn't even know it until his exclamation. But she was past caring. Besides, this was more than she wore to the beach. I am going to tell Mma this. I am going to make them aware that they have a pervert as a friend. He laughed again. If I wanted a female company for the night, I wouldn't have chosen you for the world. He winked at her, getting up. Helen stared at him, trying to understand why his confession hurt her so much. Yet, here you are, in my bed. She smiled sweetly at him. I chose this room before this house was built. I made changes in the blueprint when I saw it. I bought all the furniture in this room. I don't see how you think you can get away with lying about how you got in here. I am beginning to think I am the one being stalked, he answered, wondering why he didn't notice he wasn't alone all through the night. He didn't even want to understand why he felt so peaceful and energized. He hadn't felt this way in a long while. What was it about her? He thought as his confusion and dread rose. Even if I'm obsessed with you, which I am not, I wouldn't choose this way to make it known to you, Helen said, almost shouting. She was losing control of the conversation. When did the table turn? When did she become the stalker? Did you really come for your purse yesterday? Or was that yet another excuse to get into my bed? How dare you think? Because no one in this house will give you the use of this room, especially when I am in town and visiting at the same time. Helen became speechless and could only stare as the meaning of what he was saying dawned on her. Mama had never questioned her choosing to stay in this room of all the other rooms the castle could boast of. If Uche knew she stayed in this room, he never gave any indication. Was he right? Was this an honest mistake? If it were, would he believe her? He faced her. What kind of a woman are you? How come you are so desperate to cheat on your boyfriend? You think I would offer more? Pay higher for your services? She slapped him for an answer, and afterwards stared at the red, angry marks of her fingers with shock and unbelief as he slightly touched his cheek. Suddenly she became afraid, very afraid of his reaction, and made a quick move to run from the violence she could see clearly erupting from him. But he was quicker and caught her by the waist. If you ever try something like this again, I promise I would hit back. Helen knew the terror engulfing her was of something far more dangerous from her foggy past than any threat Chuck could utter or pose at that moment. She couldn't help drowning in it. I am sorry, please don't hit me. Shocked, Chuck stared at her. Of course he would never hit her, but she was behaving like he was a monster and about to devour her. She was shaking, and her mouth was quivering, not knowing what to do. He hugged her to offer the little comfort he could and reassure her that he would never hit a woman, leastways her. But when he gathered her in his arms, he found out why he slept like a baby. Their bodies were meant for each other, and he kissed her forehead. I don't know why I feel this volcanic hunger for you all of a sudden. It scares me, but I would never hurt you, never physically. He swooped in and began to kiss her.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home. Love, sweet love, it's you I'm dreaming of every